Welcome to Between Two Clinicians, the podcast that gives you a backstage pass into the mind of two therapists. I'm Talia.
I'm Adam Luke. We've spent years helping others navigate the complexities of their minds and relationships.
In this podcast, we're flipping the script, and we're sharing our own unfiltered insights. No topic is off limits, and no issue too taboo. We're ready to tackle the tough stuff with honesty and empathy. Let's dive in. Hello, Adam. How are you?
Well, hello, Talia.
It's a good day to have a good day. That's what I've been told.
I would agree with that. It's not a bad day at all.
Yeah.
It's one of the first days that Tennessee has dropped into the 30s, so we are officially on our way to winter.
Fun. We have a shockingly sunny day. It's like 78 and sunny, so it's been almost a year since I've given birth, so that's been cool. Yeah. So yay, I'm alive. We've made it.
Count your victories.
Yeah, small victories, really. No, it's been a year, so we're going to celebrate that, and we're going to celebrate having this episode be right sandwiched in between our holiday episodes, the Thanksgiving one. But yeah, by the time this one's out, the Thanksgiving one is already out. It's a smash hit. Everybody has loved it. We give you a lot of feedback. If you haven't listened to that, pause this one and go back and listen. We give you a lot of feedback and lovingly constructive criticism of how to navigate Thanksgiving or that season with your family. Today's episode is a nice supplement and break that we have lovingly called "So What Are You Going to Do About It? Awareness Without Action Means Nothing," which we'll dive into in a moment. And then next episode is "Ho Ho Holy Hell," because it's another holiday. And my favorite meme is Thanksgiving and Christmas should be 6 months apart because it's absurd to see the same people again so soon.
Yes.
So that I will
all in on that.
Yeah.
That was a perfect mic drop intro right there.
There it is.
Because this is what we're thinking. You've just gotten through Thanksgiving.
Yes.
You've sat with a lot of different people who have said a lot of different things, and here you are trying to reconcile what the heck just happened.
The whiplash.
The whiplash. Because what's interesting is we normally sit around with people, and then all of a sudden these phrases come out like, respect your elders. Well, I'm your parents. Well, I'm whatever.
I didn't raise you that way. Then who did?
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why the title of this podcast is the title of the podcast of so a lot of times we sit down and we have conversations after the fact, years removed, and we find out that people have become educated just enough to find new permission slips.
And they don't do what...
Well, that's my anxiety. Yeah. That's my anxiety.
Well, I had to. I had a terrible childhood. Of course I had to cheat on you. Or I was drunk. Or, of course, I was going to yell and scream because I have bipolar disorder. Or, well, that's just how your uncle is. And there's a lot of dismissing when poor behavior occurs, both when I truly think I rarely poorly behave because of how self-aware I am, but I'm one of the, like you are, people who does take action with the awareness.
True.
And there are times where people are strategic about when they take action. So they're in, if we're looking at stages of change, they are not stuck in pre-contemplation or contemplation. True. They're in preparation, understandably. And they're wanting to make sure they stay in preparation and do just enough analysis that when action occurs, they have a less likelihood to regress or move into relapse. That is the goal that at least you and I have with our clients. And that's another talking point we'll hit on today. How therapists play a role in this is sometimes enabling and coddling clients to not do with the insight, not do anything with the insight that they have. And rather it's like the example that was given to me when I took my Enneagram psychoanalytic training, that type 4s are the moody artists. They're very in touch with their emotions, but they're the type to sit in a burning house and be like, oh, aren't these flames beautiful? Get the fuck out of the house. What are you doing? Don't romanticize this.
I feel so
right. Oh, but just my skin is melting. It smells terrible, but it's so warm. We don't want to enable our clients. We also don't want to force or push them into action before they're ready. And that is something I work on with my supervisees. How do you then sit in that discomfort or that middle ground of, I know what I need to do, I'm not ready to do it yet. And then can we angle the conversation of, so what do you need to have happen, or what do you need to stop happening for you to do it? Like that's like the third step,
Well
and
said.
not spending too much time in, oh yeah, well, wouldn't it be nice if that, well, then do something about it. The best thing to do is give it a try. And then worst case scenario, you come back here with more information and we'll try
Mm-hmm.
again. I don't want to have my clients stay stuck in, I'm not taking action for too long. So
Yeah.
that is like the topics that we'll try to cover today. And our first,
Mm-hmm.
we actually took notes. So our first talking point was that you being aware of something doesn't mean you can use it as an excuse to behave or not take action on something. So I'll pass the mic to you.
Well, I
Take us away.
appreciate that.
Yes.
I'm still trying to like chew on it because we just popped up with like, there's a lot of different ways we can take this. But okay, so first talking point. I think this is most of the time we experience this when someone is trying to weaponize a diagnosis or some level of awareness against
Or a
other
previous
people.
trauma.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where all of a sudden this becomes a justification for my actions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I loved how you nailed it. Like, well, my childhood, or well, some sort of experience, as if this experience gives me a permission slip to then abuse other people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, a lot of us are survivors of many different things.
Yes.
Survivorship doesn't mean that then we can perpetuate those same hostilities or emotional injuries on other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how do you navigate that? I think this is when you start utilizing your own boundaries a little bit better. Of like, there's going to be times where you're going to let people actually have to tell you what type of relationship they want to have with you. And
Mm.
so, if a person is communicating, I feel like I'm justified in abusing your trust or pushing past your boundaries or straight up ignoring your boundaries, sort of attacking your autonomy. This isn't a gentle nudge. This person's actually telling you through the most honest form of
Action.
communication,
Yep.
their behavior,
Mm-hmm.
that they actually are not interested in a two-way street. They're looking for either servitude or they're looking for emotional containment, and you are the dump site.
Yep. Yep. And you, as the recipient of that, being aware, I went through this the other day with somebody who shall remain nameless. They
Mm,
were asking me a question of like, well, why did so and so, I'm not in their brain, so I don't know, but like, why did that
mm,
person do that? I don't know. You'd have to ask them. That's like a mystery. I have had the same
mm,
questions as long as I've known them, trying to move on from it. And then a few minutes later, well, what about, okay, so in my head, we've already covered that. Again, I'm not
mm,
them. I can't give you that answer. A few minutes later, and then it got to this kind of crescendo of, well, which is totally not on the topic of what the like line of questioning was, but it was like, well,
yeah.
I have a right to know that information. And I said to the person, you can feel as righteous as you want about the like entitlement to the knowledge. I don't have it to give to you. So you're
Mm,
barking up the wrong tree, and not like I'm going to fight them, but like you're barking up the wrong tree. I'm not in that person's psyche. I don't have the information that they would have. And that is often the case that we see when a person is aware of something and they're not taking an action on it. That person is the person you need to be talking to. I
mm,
don't know why that person's not doing something about it, or I don't know why that person did do something. And that's the kind of my interweave with being in therapy. When clients come in and they're venting, processing,
mm,
reprocessing, whatever word you want to use
yeah.
about, well, why does my mom do this? Why does my dad do this? Why did my boyfriend? Why does my husband? Why does my girlfriend?
Mm,
Why does insert person here do this? I don't give them of like, well, why would you do that? Because that's a projective identification. I never
mm-hmm,
encourage them to think, well, why might somebody do that? Or why would you do that? Because why I do something isn't
yeah.
why you would do something. I, as the therapist, when clients bring that up, I try to lovingly say, you would have to ask them. If you have any other evidence of their behavior, you and I can make an educated guess why they did it. If they've
Mm-hmm,
done this before, like you're saying, betrayal of trust, it's because they don't respect you. Sometimes it doesn't
mm,
take a detective to figure out why someone's doing something in terms of their pattern of behavior, but as to the level of insight that person has into why they did something, it could vary vastly between two people. And that's why it's the best thing to go to the person and not get stuck in the narrative of, well, they would just say this, or then you're going to say that. And then it's like, wow, you've really written me quite the story. I would have done none of that. Or
mm-hmm.
the last time we had a conversation like this would have been 5 years ago. So maybe that version of me would have, but you have to give
Or
people a
just a
chance.
person of me
Yeah.
last week. Like I
Yeah.
can choose
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
change dynamically.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
think that's always an issue when certain people want to say that they have the power to change
Mhm.
while also telling you you don't have the power to move. You have to stay the same.
Mm. Mhm.
So like something that I got lit up for on the last video was that there was a comment on, well, you are a victim blamer,
I saw
right?
that.
And so I want to just say that I'm not a victim blamer. I just don't believe that victims are always powerless in everything. Now
I
we
agree.
are we are powerless in what people do to us when again they cross our boundaries, when they again share with us something that we didn't invite in.
Mm-mm.
But there is this part that we have to sit in that, wait a second, if I am around someone who tells me that they have an excuse to behave or not to take action about something, and then I continue to interact with them the same way, time in and time out, I am actually communicating to them how I wish to be treated.
Mhm. Yeah, your
Now,
actions will say something, even if your mouth doesn't.
absolutely. So I have to recognize that even when I'm powerless of some people coming into my life and bringing in some sort of trauma that I didn't want to experience, if I continue to allow that person to be afforded that space,
Mhm.
I am choosing to have a very vulnerable and insecure relationship that's probably
Mhm.
going to perpetuate more traumas and more experiences. And
Mhm.
that's why we have to pay attention to, again, what they're doing, not what they're saying. Like when I was working for the court systems, I mean, I would sit with so many people. A lot of my clients were either victims of sexual abuse or battered women.
Mm.
And what was interesting was hearing a lot of battered women say, he tells me he wants to be different. Like, should I do it for the kids? Should I do it for, oh, he's trying to get his life back on track? This is
Mm.
not me victim blaming. They did not
Mm.
deserve to be treated the way that they were
No.
treated, but we do get a choice on how close to the fire that we stand. And we have to, like, the times that I've seen these women and even the men who had also experienced domestic violence, those who were willing to admit, wait a second, I have power in where I stand in people's lives,
Mhm.
they were then able to step into their own power
Yes.
and say, I actually have the ability to protect myself. I do not have to be bare and vulnerable to people who time in and time again tell me that they do not deserve to have that level of accessibility or vulnerability from me.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the middle ground between this this whatever it is happened to me, and technically that would put me in the I use the word recipient, like recipient slash victim position. That doesn't mean that I need to remain in that position. It might mean that I will struggle in the interim until I reclaim my power, or until I um, find a sense of agency that maybe was shaken or kind of knocked over when something happened to me, like we're talking about, that I didn't
Mhm,
ask for. But that doesn't mean I'm entirely powerless. And something my therapist taught me when I was going through separating this year was, just because you don't have as much control as you would like doesn't mean you're powerless. And I validate that it could feel that way. So that key piece where she kind of, that second talking point that we have, that it's
mhm,
like she didn't coddle or overly validate or unintentionally invalidate. She was the perfect
mhm,
sweet spot of, based on what you're sharing, how it makes you feel. I totally get that. And I want to let you know that's actually not true. Like, that's not an
mm,
objective truth. So let's check the facts on it and recreate a narrative that's more true, that doesn't
yeah,
invalidate the emotion that you're going through. And I think that's
mhm,
people. You don't need a therapist. I mean, we are therapists telling you that technically. We're not your therapist legally or ethically. There's that self accountability and ownership of, you can know that you're working through something
mhm,
and use it as a supporting reason why you may have slipped up or may have struggled or are working through a new
mm,
behavior. That is again that middle ground sweet spot of, I'm sorry I lashed out at you. I am working on my
mhm,
anger in session, or I didn't sleep well last
mm,
night. Not your fault. Totally on me. What can I do to
of
make it
course.
right? That is, I'm aware of something, but I'm doing something about it. And I'm not using
Mm,
it as, well, of course you knew you were going to get yelled at. I didn't sleep well last night. That's me making you
boom.
victim
That's
of
me
my behavior.
projecting my own
Yes.
permission. I'm
Yes. Like,
allowed to do this
yeah,
because something bad has happened to me.
exactly.
And that right there is how we can actually watch victims become offenders.
Yep.
because at some point in time, our unhealed emotional wounds become
Mm-hmm.
justifications for us perpetuating it on other people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that I know, oh man, people are going to get pissed, but I'm going to say it out loud. So when I was working with victims of sexual abuse, who were the offenders? The offenders were often people who were sexually abused. Now, this is one of those situations where people go, how could this happen? Well, there's a legitimate, if you do not take this head on, of actually healing these wounds,
Mm-hmm.
the reality is you go back to what has been role modeled to you. If
Mm-hmm.
that level of pain,
Mm-hmm.
intrusion, abuse of just your natural autonomy isn't fixed,
Mm-hmm.
isn't somehow triaged,
Reset.
then
Yeah.
we are going to move into a spot where I may take the things that have done to me and do it to the most vulnerable again.
Yeah.
The other way that I've heard is when people actually get into a position of like their parents may have been their offenders. Doesn't mean sexually, it means physically, probably. Maybe they were
Or
extremely
emotionally.
abusive
Yeah.
or emotionally. And all of a sudden, that parent now becomes invalid. And
Mm.
you have to caretake for a person who did not have care for you.
Mm-hmm.
And sitting with people that they recognize, wait a second, the power differential shifts, and all of a sudden I have that very hurt or wounded side that says, well, we finally have the power now.
Yeah. Yeah. We
I,
call that identification with the aggressor. And it's a
mm,
way that people cope with being a victim of abuse. It's a defense mechanism where they take on the role of the abuser.
mm,
It's most common when this starts to occur during childhood, but this also occurs in domestic violence relationships. And I want to
yep.
be very clear that DV doesn't only include, well, he hit me or she hit me.
Mm-hmm.
DV includes financial abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, religious abuse, social abuse. There's so many other facets of
Context.
it that it's not that archetype that we see on media.
Yeah.
Granted, media has expanded more now to be more inclusive about it, which I appreciate because other people are able to educate themselves. Like we
Mm,
talked about in the first point, it's like, oh, wait, like that is my relationship. Oh, shit, am I in an abusive relationship? Oh, how am I going to
mm,
do something about that rather than, well, this is all I'm worth or all I'm good for. And this is what my parents told me, or I would never amount to anything, or at
mm,
least he doesn't hit me. So I'd rather take this relationship where I'm getting love 25% of the time, but abuse 75%, than trade it off for being alone or 100%. And in some cases, this is where, like you're talking about or
mm-hmm,
touching on, we see somebody take action. So they have this awareness and they take
mm,
action, but the action inadvertently makes them become the
yep.
abuser or become the person who tries to take somebody else's control and power away from
Yep.
them. That's not the action we're recommending to
Mm-mm,
take. It's you have your own power, I have my own power, and I'm going to choose to exercise my power, which can sometimes look like inaction. I'm not
yeah.
going to interact with you. I'm not going to continue this relationship. I'm not going to continue around the holiday season, right? This
Mm,
conversation. I'm not going to continue this friendship for the time being until you can get sober or until you are in
mm,
therapy or until I'm in my own therapy or until I've
yeah.
slept or I've had a bite to eat. That's you being able to take your
Mm,
power and control, which is different than taking somebody else's power and control away from them to make you feel
correct.
safe. Your safety is your responsibility, and others can help encourage the feeling of you feeling safe
Mm,
or being safe, but at the core of it, you have a responsibility and you are responsible for keeping yourself safe and for making sure you feel safe and not putting yourself knowingly, of course, in a
mm-hmm,
situation that you are unsafe. Sometimes it's
yeah.
subconscious because you're trying to reclaim your
Mm,
power, you're trying to test and see. You don't need to go put yourself back there. Like I joke with my clients, I'm like, some people need to hit rock bottom and some people just need to be sent a postcard and they're like, that looks awful, I'm never going there. You pick
yep.
which camp you fall into. Hey there, listeners. Are you tired of settling for less than you deserve in your relationships? Do you ever feel like you're not being seen, heard, or valued the way that you want? Or maybe you've been wondering why you keep attracting the same kinds of people into your life, or why certain patterns seem to repeat themselves in your relationships. The answer might be deeper than you think, and you can find it in my new course. Rewire Your Relationships is a transformative course designed to help you stop settling for less than you deserve and start embodying your most confident, assertive, and authentic self in your relationships. You'll explore how your early experiences and parental influences have shaped your views on love, dating, and self-worth. This isn't just about tips and tricks for dating. It's about understanding the core beliefs that drive your relationships that you attract. You'll learn how to break free from those old patterns and start creating the kind of connections that truly reflect who you are. Imagine stepping into a relationship with clarity and confidence, knowing you're attracting people who value and respect you for who you really are, your deeply authentic self. The Rewire Your Relationship course gives you the tools to rewrite your relationship story, one where you're no longer settling, but thriving. Visit taliabombola.com/rewireyourrelationships or check the link in the show notes for more.
A lot of times we will get stuck in these places where sometimes we also use our traumas as like these really fucked up merit badges. Like, oh, this is where
in an
I've been.
Instagram bio. That's my favorite thing about Gen Z.
Yes.
I'm like, what happens if we treat this though, and you don't have
Well,
that symptomatology anymore? Then who are you?
well, your emotional wounds shouldn't be social accessories like that, and that's what we're moving into. Is like it shouldn't be in your bio, and if it is in your bio, the reality is you're probably not taking it as serious as you need to take it. Like, we're also in this like Western culture where there's like this tremendous amount of oversharing, where like we feel like we have to do this daily download with whether it's every dating every date that we go on, or just again like even when you're hitting up the apps, like the level of like information we share with a person that we truly don't know if they're a real person, right? But why do we do it? Oh, because this speaks to how aware I am or how healed I am. And see, that's the whole premise of this conversation is just because you're aware of it doesn't mean you're actually moving into healing. There has to be that other action, which is, wait a second, I'm actually worthy of protecting myself. I'm worthy of holding back bits of my story because a person earns the ability to hear that story. They never have a right to that story. Like, even I'll, and this will probably also get flack, but like, even when you're in committed relationships, there's things that you won't know about your wife or your husband that it's not malicious for you not to know about that. Your relationship shouldn't be so sterile that it reads like a medical chart. And so
or so enmeshed. Yeah. Or so enmeshed that it's like, I know everything about them. And it's like, well, first of all, don't you want to have a little, we're not talking like they have dead bodies hidden somewhere, like not like that. Oh, so fun surprise, 25 years in. Yeah, like not like that. You're not married to Jeffrey Dahmer secretly. But it's like the little things of like, oh, I didn't know you played, football in college or whatever, or you were on the twirling team in 5th grade. Like those little things where it invigorates that novelty. Those are the fun pieces where you don't want to use too much self-disclosure or over disclose your whole life. And sometimes people do that. They like blabber in the beginning of a relationship because they're trying anything they can to like impress this person. Unfortunately, in today's society, people either they blabber too much about what they're going through in therapy or their diagnosis or these labels or their justifications for these behaviors, and it's like that's not really going to get you close to somebody, because again, my philosophy is if we treat it decently well or well enough, you ideally are asymptomatic or have it so well managed, people would be shocked if they ever found out you were previously diagnosed with it, right? It's like going into remission. That's also why I don't want clients to rely on a diagnosis as a crutch or a justification, or allow them to participate in a relationship where other people in their life are using it of like, well, my parents are emotionally immature, so they're going to yell at me or this or that. It's like they might, like that might be their behavioral response to whatever they're going through, but that doesn't mean you have to stand there and take it, and that doesn't mean you have to participate in a relationship with them. And if you must, because let's say you live there till you graduate college or whatever it might be, then you can change the energetic tone of it. There's like some Reiki energetic work that we can do. And there's also limitations to how much and in what ways you participate. And that's where I think people lose sight of their own power and sometimes get so stuck in their own therapy sessions, the over empathizing, over validating. Oh, that's got to be so hard, for you to live at home with your emotionally immature parent. How does that make you feel? I feel so sad. What do you do when you feel sad? Here's a coping skill. Other, our approaches that I think you and I have chatted about before. It's like, okay, well, what would it be like? And I'm not saying actually do this for some, but I'm like, what would it be like if you told your parents to F off? And they're like, oh, and I'm like, I'm not we're not actually going to say that, but there's a part of you. I can guarantee there's a part of you that feels
that
so
wants
wronged
to.
and resentful that wants to. So let's get that part out here safely and take a scoop of it, and lovingly and respectfully utilize it when you set a boundary with them about how they're allowed to treat you, right? So it's like, let's go there in the privacy and confines of therapy, and then let's do something about it. We're not just going to, it's like the research that's come out about those rage rooms or whatever they're called, where you go in and you like, it sometimes is good to act on it in that way, but sometimes that can inversely cause more aggression because now your body's like, oh, let's, get this.
Well, you're conditioning a response.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
I think we always have to take into account that we're conditioning responses.
Yeah.
Even like as a therapist, as a father, as a husband, I have to pay attention to like how most arguments with my wife end is probably how most of them are going to start and how most of them are going to be role modeled. Now, I have to sit with, are these disagreements actually how I would want them to be experienced either by the ears of my kid or like how am I actually like living out what I do when I work with people?
Yeah.
And it's a challenge because this is what I want to just throw out there is if your therapist's office feels more like a recruitment center than it does a mental gym, you need to run. Because there is an aspect of our industry where they very much want to validate you. They really want to sit there and be able to justify why you react, why you behave, what you're experiencing. And then there's zero action. Like no one would sit with a personal trainer who would write out an amazing program and then tell you not to do anything with it.
Or not like, coach you on it. They just sit there like, yeah, you could do it. It's like, can't you teach me how to? I think you'll figure it out.
Yeah, no, I mean, just do it. Start lifting. Like, and I think that some of it comes from, I call it the genius level problem, where there are some people that are very good at reading systems. They're very good from a textbook psychology side, but then the application to real life just misses the mark. Right. So, but this is what we're really trying to say is like, if you're finding yourself in a position where you're being recruited to do nothing, but to sit in a tremendous amount of awareness, this is an unsustainable situation for yourself.
Yeah.
Like I have to take the knowledge that I have at hand now and then apply a new strategy because I wish to experience life differently. If you don't put any new strategies, you won't experience life differently just because you now know why you do what you do. I experience this when I'm working with my guys who are taking back their life from sexual addiction. Sometimes we reach the awareness. We understand the emotional wounds. I will tell you, I've sat with men who are like, oh yeah, I exactly knew that I was trying to isolate from an extremely vulnerable situation and I still went ahead and consumed pornography. Like, cool. There's no points awarded because you knew why you were doing the bad thing. You don't get to say, I have had this tragedy in my life, so let me hit the heroin and now I'm justified in that action.
And if you are the person who is currently in that process and you are using it like that of like, well, I did this because of this, the kindest thing you can do for yourself and others is not bring other people into what you are trying to heal or enact on others, what you're working through. And I think this is the caution with people who are listening to this who are like, I'm so self-aware, like let me listen to this podcast on self-awareness so I can become even more self-aware. The people who fall under that category often enable or over validate or give reason where the other person has not, and they make an excuse. Like the ultimate echelon is they make an excuse on behalf of the other person who typically would be using their behavior as an excuse or their childhood or their diagnosis as an excuse. But now this person comes in. This is kind of a deeper part of the defense of the identification with the aggressor. It's not always about abuse. It could be about neglect, emotional unavailability, volatility. I'm going to identify, not meaning I'm going to become that and enact on it, but it's like, I'm going to be a people pleaser. I'm going to be overly empathetic and try to understand where they're coming from. Well, of course, of course they did that because they had such a tough childhood, but I'm special and I'm different and they won't need to be that way with me. So what I think I'll do is lean in and just love them the way they weren't loved. And then maybe finally they'll know what it feels like to not need to be abused, and inadvertently that's going to get you more abused, because if the person who has that psyche is not doing the work and you're trying to do their work on their behalf, what occurs is this person is going to further defend against you, and you're actually going to be hurt worse
Oh,
because
absolutely.
you're giving them something you think they want or arguably would benefit them, but unless they're ready and willing to accept it, they're going to fight you tooth and nail to not take what you were trying to give to them, because it would require themselves to take accountability and responsibility for, you know what, I probably do cheat on my partners because I saw my dad cheat on my mom when I was growing up, or I saw, my first relationship, the woman cheated on me. So now I will never get too close, because what happens if you get too close is you get hurt. Like, wherever the story comes from that I've heard from clients in my office and friends in my personal life who have gone through
Yeah.
that, my cautionary tale to them is, do not overly identify and try to enable them of, well, it's okay, I know that, you yelled at me last night because you were drunk, but like, that's like a one-time thing, right? And the other person's like, yeah, sure, it's a one-time thing. They don't have insight and awareness into it. They're just going along with what you're going with because it benefits them. So be mindful not to fall in the trap that you and I have talked about, that like some therapists are too enabling. Don't enable or shift into that codependent role of assuming the other person is sorry when they're not.
I know we've touched on it in other episodes, but when we move into that codependency mode, a lot of times the one that's willing to, hey, let me keep you in this space, the whole mindset is, what am I willing to accept versus what do I actually want? So we step into it saying, okay, so you're going to be diminished capabilities in this, but I can accept that. And the problem is, it's like a snowball. At first, it's like, oh, so there's not really going to be personal displays of affection. Oh, they don't really use emotional language. And then it just keeps going and going and going till eventually you get to a spot that you've sort of Stockholmed yourself so much that then you are just raging resentment, anger, and frustration. And I tell you, like, this, it rings true for like some of the women that I sit down with, that like, yes, you tried to save him. Yes, you tried to be the best for him. You tried to control all of his options so that he wouldn't be able to hurt himself in you. But you never once thought about, how do I feed myself first? How do I make sure that I'm nourished? Like, how do I can't essentially build this whole lifestyle where I am an elective and then be frustrated that this person has made me an elective.
Who did it start with, really? And I think that's where I ask my clients, like, where did you learn the role of helper / giver, and which parent? It typically always goes back to childhood. Like, which parent did you have to perform, audition, or overfunction in order to hopefully, fingers crossed, receive some semblance of or any amount of their love? And that's the template that gets set, that we then further enact when we become adults and get into our adult romantic relationships. Whatever was modeled for us is typically our first go-to, until we go in and do the work and understand, you know what, my core way of relating to other people might be over-serving, over-functioning as a way to be loved, and I don't need to do that. What I need to take accountability for is, how can I learn to receive? Can I have a relationship or friendship that's based on mutual reciprocity, and it's not based on my worth is what I give to them, how much I can tolerate, how much I can fix? And especially going into the holiday season, this does come up in family systems, where you see some of the family members might be very quiet or withdrawn because over the years they've learned not to participate, and some are very outspoken, and usually it's the one not outspoken in a good way, meaning like they're advocating. They're just like the brash, really rude ones, where you're just like, oh my God, did they just say that out loud? And like, to be the brave one and go like, you know what, this doesn't work for me, or uncle so-and-so or aunt so-and-so, grandpa, what, I feel uncomfortable when this kind of conversation is brought up, so I'm going to leave. So that's me taking ownership of my behavior. I can do something about that, rather than sit there silently resenting or try to force them. Well, stop saying it like that. You have no clue what you're talking about. And trust me, there's a part of you that's going to throw the tantrum, but the effective thing to do, if you're going to verbalize it and not just Irish goodbye to avoid, is, this is really tough for me to sit here and hear this conversation. I don't want to interrupt that it's happening. So I'm just going to go take myself to the other room. And then that's where you use the broken record technique. So you can make differences and make difference and make change in your relationships that you have with other
Mm-hmm.
people, but it will require you to go like, how do I show up, and where do I need to stop showing up that way to
Mm,
break the cycle? I can't change others. I can't make them more aware. I can't make
yeah.
them as aware as I am. And I don't want people to fall in the trap of, I'm so self-aware that I justify
Yeah.
everything that they've done. There was a meme, I was actually going to bring it up because it's very timely for what we talked about today. Please teach your children, or this was technically for daughters to daughters, because this is the more common trope. Please teach your daughters that following a man through hell is not love. Sticking by his side while he drags
Mm,
you through years of embarrassment and infidelity that makes you question your worth is not love. Abandoning your dignity and self-respect to keep the peace is not love. Unlearn that. No man, really no person that truly loves you would ever put themselves in a position to lose you or hurt you
mm,
consciously. You may unintentionally hurt someone,
of
and that's the
course.
case in families too. Like, I'm so sorry, I didn't know missing that recital was going to hurt your feelings. Did I
Mm,
ask? And did you honestly answer? That's the key question. I could go down on, kid level and be like, honey, mommy has to work on this day. It would never
mm-hmm.
happen to me, but like in theory, right? In family therapy, it's like, hey, I'm going on deployment. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to be able to make your Christmas recital. I'm so
Mm,
sorry. How is that for you? I'm sad. Or you don't then respond, oh yeah, it's fine, and dismiss it, because you're avoiding that core closeness that the person could then make a repair. If I don't know I need to make a repair, the onus is on you. That's not on me. If I asked, how can I make this
mm,
right? And you kept the peace and swept it under the rug just for the sake of family or whatever it is,
yeah.
like, yes, that's my part in it, but that's also the other person's part, that they could have, I'm not saying should, like shaming, they could have said something. And that's where going to therapy and having somebody challenge
Yeah.
you and push you is healthy, effective therapy. Don't just sit there silently, frustrated, angry, about to
Mm,
explode for the sake of keeping the peace, because that's going to start a war inside yourself. That's not worth it.
oh, absolutely. And again, that's, if you're in that therapeutic alliance, you should be in a position where someone is asking you, if we keep on experiencing the same things over and over
Mhm.
again, the therapy is actually not benefiting us.
Right.
Like,
Right.
and that's, I'll call it out. There are therapists out there that treat their clients as revenue streams. You know,
Yeah. That
it,
sucks.
it does, because it looks bad on the rest of us. And
Hmm.
those are normally the loudest people out in society saying therapy doesn't work. And I think that
Mm,
that's why you owe it to yourself to at least try it a couple times with a couple different people if you feel like you're not getting traction. And then sure, you can take your own experiences away from it. But
mhm.
I know that a lot of times I've had clients that have been frustrated with me because I am so quick to move to action.
Yeah.
Like even while we're in processing of like breaking down, assessing, stuff like that, because I just do not accept that thought process that we are so powerless that we cannot move into power in our own lives at some point in time.
Hmm.
Like there are little things we can do.
Hmm.
We don't have to wait for like I feel like a lot of times people are waiting for the masterpiece to be finished and then we'll apply. Like
Hmm.
here's the reality. As you continue to learn more about yourself, you never stop learning more about
Exactly.
yourself. So if you are waiting for that pause where then I'll be able to apply this, you will go through the totality of your life knowing why you do things, having great levels of introspection, but never having repair.
Hmm.
That's not what therapy is about. We don't want you
Right.
to have great introspection and then fail to ever make repair or change in your own life.
Yeah. The self-awareness is a phenomenal advantage and like an asset to
Mm,
have. And I think the world would benefit if the general population were more self-aware and
oh
other
yeah.
aware. That's like the balance.
Yep.
And then learning how to navigate that, but not use it as a crutch or use it
Mm,
as a weapon. I think proper therapy does challenge you in the right way. It doesn't
hmm.
coddle you. It
No.
allows you space to vent, to complain, to process, to kind of lay out on the table what you actually need to do something with, but it
Hmm.
might fall short if there's not that action step at the end. And I think that's like the key message I would like people to take away from this episode, especially going in the holidays. Knowing that your family is a certain way
Hmm.
is beneficial, and taking accountability for your own part in it as well. Like, how do
Hmm.
you show up? How do they show up? and knowing that your voice, even if it's been demonstrated to you that your voice doesn't matter, meaning what you've asked for is not going to happen, then you move into other realms of boundaries, like a physical boundary where I'm not going to show up to that, or I'm internally going to show up and only stay an hour, like we talked about in the last episode. You can change how you show up and participate. That might be that you show up and participate at all, how you show up and participate, when you show up and participate. You're not totally powerless in this. You do have agency. You do have ownership of your behaviors. Even if the people around you aren't going to change, you can change.
Man, that's kind of a mic drop right there.
You know me, I'm on fire today.
This girl is on fire.
Yes, that's the song that plays in my head whenever.
Yeah. I'm always like, why does no one have a fire extinguisher? This poor chick is on fire.
Truly.
And everyone's singing. Like,
I know.
That's kind of disgusting.
Yeah. That's the Enneagram 4. Aren't these flames beautiful?
As long as y'all are warm, y'all feeling good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I use that phrase quite often with clients is don't set yourself on fire to keep other people warm.
Yep.
Like, and this is the takeaway of this episode of, like, again, even if someone says, hey, I've done a level of introspection and I know that I have this diagnosis or this tendency, don't allow those people to use those levels of introspection as permission slips to abuse you in your own life. Like that's not the takeaway. You don't get to say, I now know why, and that's why you just have to take it. No, what you tell me, what you are telling me is you actually have a level of arrogance and ignorance. You understand something, but you don't understand how it applies.
Yeah, I will leave listeners with this funny meme. As everyone knows, I love memes. It's like the epitome of not taking accountability. I hope I have it as a screenshot. Yeah, I can't find it, but it's basically like, oh, sorry, I cheated on you. My like ex-girlfriend's cousin's hamster died in 7th grade, and I'm like still not over it. Like the level of mental gymnastics of not taking accountability, where it's like, yeah, or you could just like be better, like that's an option too. But yeah, I will try to find that meme and I'll post it on the website or on the Spotify. So thank you everyone for listening, and tune in if you're still alive. Tune into our next episode. Ho ho holy hell.
I can't wait. It's my favorite one of the year.
Me too. It's our Super Bowl. We're ready.
Woo!
We've been preparing for this. We're like the Tom Brady of the mental health.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
I don't know other football players. So
you'll be Tom Brady. I'll be Gronk. Okay. And this is the super team right here.
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
Good.
Other people hate us, but we always win.
That's probably the theme of this podcast. So good. Awesome. Okay. Well, we'll see everybody in 2 weeks.
Talk to you guys soon.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Between Two Clinicians. We would so appreciate if this episode resonated with you, for you to share it with somebody, and also find your favorite podcast platform and like, rate, and subscribe to the podcast. We would love to attract more listeners just like you and have this message be spread to whoever needs it. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.